Hi everybody, unfortunately this is a very sobering video. It is the reality of, it's now mid-April, time of year I love, but the reality is materials are nearly in hyper inflation mode, and that impacts us all throughout the industry at all levels, all jurisdictions. Some of us are feeling it right at the coalface. Others of us will feel it further down the road if it has a detrimental impact upon output. So while some of us may be slightly insulated and from it now, the reality is once it gets into the economic system, it affects all of us in the long run. So where are the figures actually at? The Central Statistic Office has them at 1.8 since the start of the year, but the reality is at the coalface it's 8 to 19%. I actually only saw an email from a contractor today from McCann's on South Circular Road saying that they were going to have increases from 10 to 15% on the products, and that was going to come into effect in May. So, and that's an adjustment, and others of them are more active. This information is actually, and I'll leave all the references at the end, this information is not hearsay, it is gathered on what contractors have supplied me with and a deep dive into what the economists are saying, what the sector's saying, what the leaders in the sector are saying as well. So the CSO headline actually blurs the real reality. Why? Because there's a lag in the information, it's not updated as much, it isn't current, and that lag leads to a distortion. So what's actually happening at the coalface is since January, insulation 30% increase, blocks 26% increase, drainage pipes 20, aggregate 16, like even aggregate. And you kind of go, how is that even possible? It's possible because fuel needs to get there. Water cylinders, cement, structural timber, plasterboards, and yet the CSO headline is 1.8 in comparison to 30. It's, and then somebody we're in negotiations with at the moment is talking about this as an index, and yet here's the reality. So we have misalignment, and the contractors are facing major risk at the moment. I'll talk a little bit about that in a second. So this is the carbon border adjustment mechanism applied on EU carbon prices, imported cement, steel, aluminium. So you can see where the prices are, and you can see the rates again for steel, and it isn't even the rate, it's also the lack of supply of these things. It's not just the rates, it's not just what it is, it's the availability. And we all know economics, price elasticity, indifference curves, intersection of a dynamic equilibrium, all of these things come into play. Market forces, global market forces, and the reality is the very first thing that any college kid in Ireland reads is the Economy of Irish book that clearly drills into everybody's head, whether you want it or not. We're a small open economy that is very dangerously tied to global events. And look, that was in the manuals 100 years ago, 50 years ago, 10 years ago, still in the manuals, and we still have not managed to incubate ourselves. I actually had a fascinating conversation with a guy, an engineer, and as far as he was concerned, it was a wind. We should have been in. We should have been the world leader in wind renewables. That conversation was 5-6 years ago. He said, we've got this Atlantic Ocean, we've got massive wind, we actually have a seabed that can take it, and it's about pulling the plug and going all in. And you kind of think now about what that says. So the sector speaks. So here's the reports from the actual sector itself. 200 companies since January. So even less, it's a month and a half. So further expected increases, acknowledgement project increases, 51, 54, 77, 80%. So this is how the whole sector is feeling at the moment. And we have to be realistic about this. So guys, sorry about that. So you can see price increases, oil impacts everything, and you can see the jump 49% year on year. Inflation, you can see it up to 2. We've actually been really good. We've been really good in a hyper economy at controlling inflation, and demand increases. With that, consumer demand increases. With that, confidence increases. With that, credit increases. With that, costs escalate because of competition. With that, prices increases, and that's the cycle that it happens in. So you can see we've actually been really good, but this is very high, and you can see where we are. You know, in April alone, 20% in insulation. So this morning, as I said to you, from 8 to 15% will be applied general manager, and this is the same for all firms. They're all facing the same scarcity, they're all facing the same increase in costs, they're all facing the same increase in demand for wages to match living wages. It's a pressure cooker system where more is going on, more heat is being applied to the cooker, and the water has to keep on boiling. It is that contagious. And that is what, and I know you guys know this, but it's the cycle of inflation. And then anxiety sets in, and all the human triggers around anxiety and scarcity and resourcefulness. And that pushes us neurologically back into survival mode rather than thrival mode and thinking clearly. So none of these things are isolated phenomena. They all impact on multiple levels. What the actual industry is saying, the scale of the oil spike, outbreak of the war, alarming small economy. So you can see that CEO, you can see the Irish Cost Consultancy, Irish Times Director, you can see inflation, same thing, European pricing, you can see the same figures there. Unfortunately. So there you can see the headline figure of insulation, and there was no increase notified. Then there was 8 to 9%, another 8 to 9%, and now there's a 10. So what that tells you from there's going to be another 10. So you could see possibly 60 to 80, maybe even 100% increase, maybe even more 100%, 110, 120% increase in inflation in 1 year on insulation. So Ireland's largest manufacturing, the Raffin Group, and you can see their figures. Revenue grew, but there is the full amount, and they got 61 branches. So you can see that sustained increases in energy in shipping the future can impact prices, and you can see what is being said consistently. So here's the resources, here's all of the references, you can check this out, guys. So what does this actually mean? It means negotiations possibly will be renegotiated. It means there may be claims for escalations of costs, depending on the scale, it'll also know 1 or 2 builders that are gone into hyper purchasing, and they're going to stock their job sites with as much materials as possible to lock in prices, and also to lock in prices from subcontractors as well, and to sign contracts with guys who they probably never normally. They have a working relationship with a guy for 10-15 years. It's kind of hard to go and to ask them to sign a contract, but this is rare times, very, very rare times. So not an enjoyable video to make, but it is the stark truth. Thanks very much, guys. If I can help in any way, let me know. Talk to you. Thanks, guys.